I will field any questions and feed those back to you at the end. Really looking forward to this, Maureen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. I appreciate it. Well, welcome everyone. I'm going to be talking about using Mote for a more inclusive learning experience, and I'm going to be doing it through the lens of a language teacher. However, a lot of the things I'll be talking about today will also be applicable to other subjects. I'm just showing it through the lens that I'm using it. So I have a little bit about me here. Just quick bio here, but the thing I want to alert you to is please feel free to live tweet if you'd like to for this session using the hashtag MoteCon and using my Twitter handle, which is at Latin Tech Tools. Super happy to do that. Also, as we go through, or if you're viewing this presentation later on and you have any questions or you want more information or there's something I can help you with, please feel free to use this Mote question slide. This is something I do with my students. It's something where we can have some asynchronous questions going on while I'm doing something with the students where they can kind of add that and that can be okay. And because they don't have to say it out loud, they can just type, they can put a mote if they want to, whatever they want to do. So, oh, I also wanted to alert you to, I have a tiny URL for this session. You can see it down at the bottom there. Feel free to follow along as you're watching or come back to this link. Nothing is proprietary from me, so feel free to do any of this. Or if you need a better template for something, please feel free to reach out. And again, that link is tinyurl.com/lamMoteCon22. Again, tinyurl.com/lamMoteCon22. And so I know I just said I was really excited. And so why do I use it for language learning or learning in general? I also teach classes as an academic technology specialist in digital citizenship, and Mote is very helpful for that as well. So it's not just language learning, but it's how I started it. The first is to save time. I don't know about you, but I am not the greatest typist in the world, especially when I have a lot to type. Hands cramp, all that good stuff. And so, as much as possible, I want to save myself some time. And I do this by using Mote to comment on student work. Oftentimes, my students are turning in work in the form of Google Docs or Google Slides or Google Forms or something like that. And so if they're handing in docs and slides, I can comment. Or if they're handing in something else, I have Google Classroom. And so I can use Mote extensions in Google Classroom to voice. And that gives me a lot of time. I can also do, I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but I have a comment bank of motes that I can use. So if I'm doing the same thing over and over again, I feel like I'm saying some of the same things, I'll use some of those, but I also do feel like it's important to personalize it as well. And that's the next great part about Mote is that it helps connect with students. There's just something about hearing a teacher's voice, it feels like an interaction with the teacher rather than just reading something. I think this is why people love when people read stories to them. It's because hearing that voice is just a wonderful way to connect with people. And so I find that by leaving comments where students can listen to my voice and then respond with their own voice, it creates a better connection with students. I also think they're more likely to listen to a mote, or at least that's what they tell me, because they would rather listen to something than read something, which I totally get. They're on their computers all day, they're reading all day. If they can stop doing that and listen to something, that's something that's really important. And it gives them a break, it gives you a break, and it's a really, it's such a great way to do it. So I love it. Okay. Also, yeah, as I was saying, they're more likely to listen. It's just, oh, I can't tell you how many times I have spent painstaking hours writing comments on student papers just to give it back. And the student says, why did I get this grade? And I said, did you read my comments? They said, no, they were too long. Or no, I didn't want to. Or I say, please go look at the comments. But I have found that since I started using Mote for this, students are far more likely to actually listen. It's wonderful. So you can give longer feedback. You can give the feedback that you need to give. And students are more likely to actually listen. And because there's nothing more deflating than spending a lot of time giving students feedback and then having them not look at it. So that's really, really helpful. Also, as a language teacher, I am a big fan of the voice to text and the translation features on here. I think that can help with accessibility. I think there's just a lot of really good things about it. And I just want to show you it really quickly. I know most of you are not novices to using Mote, but you may not have seen these cool features yet. So give me 1 second to show you. So let's say I'm adding a Mote here. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to do this wonderful handy dandy click to start. I am writing a Mote right now about this microphone. And so now we're all done. Hooray. We're going to insert this. Ooh, it's very exciting. I like that it's abracadabra magic. And you can go to these wonderful 3 little, oh, here, look, you can play. I am writing a, very exciting. We'll put it over here. Let's see, we can get the translation. Oh, I don't know if you can see this window now. Whoops. Can you see this window? No, you can't. Okay. I'm going to show it to you the other way. So this is the other way to do a Mote. You click on this and then you add a comment. I am doing a Mote about this microphone. And so then you can click to hear it, or you can click this handy dandy little pencil here. And you can, I am doing a Mote about this microphone. And so then you can translate and you can see the transcript, which is so cool. And look at all the languages you can use. That is so cool. A really fun option. So 2 ways to do Mote, both very cool. It's a lot of fun. Highly recommend it. And finally, something that I really like about Mote is that it's interactive with so many different platforms. You can use it with slides, you can use it with forms, you can use it with Google Classroom, you can use it with Gmail, which is awesome. I've just started doing this because sometimes it's fun to draft emails while I'm speaking. It's fun to draft comments too. I actually use Mote when I'm writing my end of year comments for students. I usually do a couple paragraphs of comment for each student. I work at a private school, so that's what we do. And it's been so helpful to me to just have a transcript of that. That is so helpful. And it also works with Canva and Wakelet. So that's something that's really important about Mote. It works with so many different things, and that can be really, really helpful as you're interacting with your students. So those are all why it's awesome. And now I'm going to give you 10 Mote tips to try. Again, if you have questions on this, if you want to reach out for more information, please feel free to do so. I am super happy to help. So here we go. This is the nice to Mote you introductions. I know I'm going to get a little punny here. Sometimes I couldn't think of a good one. If you can think of a better one, let me know. So I like to do this at the beginning of the year to give students an opportunity to share the name they would like to be called. Also, when is it okay to use this name in personal communication in class or in communication home? What pronouns are you comfortable using? And again, when is it okay to use these pronouns? And finally, is there anything you would like your teacher to know? And I have gotten all sorts of answers to this third question because I've gotten, I need this accommodation. I've gotten, I'm coming right from this, so I'm going to need to like run to the bathroom before class, or I'm going to do this. And so it's been so nice to have this kind of open, is there anything you'd like me to know question? Because students can share so much information that can be helpful, or it can be, I learn best through this learning style, or this is what really works for me, or I like this, I've learned this, but I'm worried because I haven't caught up on this. So just leaving an open-ended question can be so very helpful. And I leave this introduction slide that they can come back to that I've shared with each student open all year. So they can come back if they want to make any changes, if they want to be called a different name, if they're using different pronouns, or if they have other things that they would like me to know. And again, it's just fun to hear their voice and to hear them say their names and to hear them say what they would like me to know. I think it's really a nice way to make those connections. Next, direct the motion. Again, I got a little punny here. Um, and so one of the things that I have found to be the most helpful to me, and I started doing this before the pandemic, but especially during the pandemic and remote teaching, this became extremely important, was to voice record all directions. So whenever I'm giving direct students, I don't know if it's the inflection of my voice. I'm not really sure if it's because I emphasize the right words, but students have been having a much easier time of following directions when I both have them read directions and listen to my voice saying the directions. And so I would type the directions into one of the platforms that works with Mote, and then I would read those aloud using a Mote. And finally, students can play the Mote to hear and then read those directions at the same time. And that's super important too, because students can read the directions. Maybe then they start doing the activity and then they're like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot what the directions are. Oh, I need clarification on that particular part of the directions. Then it's really helpful that they can go back and listen to those directions yet again. And sometimes what I do is if I have a multi-page assignment, I just take the Mote and I replicate it. I don't even put the written part of it. I just put the Mote at the top. And they know if they click the Mote, they can hear those directions at the top of the page if I'm assigning that to students. So this is really helpful. And a lot of my students say that this is really helps them to understand the directions better. Again, I think there's something really special about a human being saying directions with the inflection of the voice, and how we say things really helps people to understand what we mean by it. So that's one of the reasons I think this works really well. And it's something that I'm definitely going to continue doing with Mote. This is something that I came up with. I was doing a presentation on Mote last spring for idiom education, and we came up with the Re-Mote for interpersonal speaking. And interpersonal speaking is basically an exchange of an extemporaneous response to information. So when students are speaking off the cuff about something, and this is particularly helpful in the language classroom when students can have a topic that they're speaking off the cuff. I know that in a lot of the AP and IB language assessments, there is some measure of interpersonal speaking usually involved. And so it's a really good practice for students to hear something and be able to extemporaneously respond to it. However, I find that sometimes students need to listen to something more than once and in different ways. This all came out of a conversation with some colleagues where we were talking about how sometimes students need to just listen to it again. Sometimes students just want to listen to it again really fast and just hear the relevant information and move forward from there. Other times, it's spoken in a way that is too fast for some students, so they need to slow it down to listen to it. Obviously, they can't do it on those exams, but when trying to go over it in class, it's something that makes it more accessible for students if they can take some time and kind of slow it down. So we were joking around with the name Mote, and we came up with the name the Re-Mote for interpersonal speaking. So for the play button there, it would be linked to a comment where the teacher is saying the recording or putting in the recording. The fast forward is the recording, but pretty fast. The rewind is the same recording, but a little bit slower. And this is just the teacher repeating it more quickly and more slowly. I don't, I don't like actually speed up or slow down the recording. It's just me speaking the whole time. And then finally, students record their extemporaneous answer, what they would want to say there. And so that is really, really helpful for students. And since I started doing this for interpersonal speaking, again, I'm a Latin teacher. And so when I do interpersonal speaking, it's not always students' comfort zone. And so it's really nice to have these options for the listening. And so it's pretty exciting that we came up with the Re-Mote, and it's just a silly fun thing to do with students too, and it's a fun way to call it. It's like, oh, instead of the interpersonal speaking assessment, we're doing the Re-Mote, and we're remoting it. So feel free to use this if you want a template that I've used before. Also feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to share that. Next, We're going to talk about interpretive listening with Google Forms. This is a newish feature, and it's something that's been so very helpful for me and my students. I can do an interpersonal listening assessment with a Mote right there in Google Forms. I don't have to upload a file or anything. It's so wonderful. And then students can either respond with words. You can have them respond with words. You can put pictures in there. There's all sorts of ways you can have students respond, which is really cool. And students can also record themselves responding and upload a file if you wanted them to do that. But I think that it's fun for them to have it as a listening activity and then demonstrate their interpretive skills with either words or pictures. That's a perfectly fun way to do it. And again, it's just fun to hear voices. It's fun to be able to use the target language in that way and make it a more communicative task. Here's another thing that I started doing pre-pandemic, but it's something that really helped people during the pandemic. It's interpretive listening and reading. So oftentimes when I'm having students read things, what I will do is I will split it up into sections. I often put those sections each into a Google slide so that students can see the sections in Google slide. It helps them to break it up. I break it up by kind of what's going on, events, themes, etc. And so I will type the text into one of the platforms here. I rely heavily on Google Slides, but you could do this with Docs as well. Then read aloud that text using a Mote comment in each section. And then students can play that Mote to hear and read that text at the same time. And usually I have a joint Google Slides for the entire class. So if students have a question, they could also use Mote to ask a question. Now, I do this in my Latin and ancient Greek classes. And I also did it in one of the English classes I was covering. It was super fun. We were doing Hamlet. And that was just really cool because the conversation that came out of that, the questions that I got from students were really cool. And I believe that when you're listening to a play, you get so much more out of it. There's just something about Shakespeare being spoken aloud that's just so powerful. And so it was really cool for them. But for a lot of students, especially students who are not neurotypical, oftentimes this will really help them if they can read and listen at the same time. It's something that will really boost their confidence and really make them feel like they understand the text better. So it's something that can be very, very good to do for students. I saw someone else did this today, bingo, but this is interpretive listening bingo. So I was watching some of the other sessions. Wow, if you haven't seen them, really go back and watch them. There are some amazing ideas in there. So interpretive listening bingo is giving students, I would give students some time to listen to the bingo board, and they would each have their own bingo board that I would put in slides for them. Then students would, so they have some time to listen to all the things. I would let them take notes, whatever they wanted to do. Then I would show students either a picture. I love doing this with cartoons. Having an action, a cartoon, and then saying it in the Mote is really cool. Or a phrase or words in L1, whatever you want to do. Then students listen to the Motes to figure out which word corresponds to the picture or whatever you're showing them. And this type of bingo I have found is really best if it's contextualized, either with a shared text or with standalone vocabulary words. Oh, sorry, or with pictures rather than standalone vocabulary words. It's really hard with standalone vocabulary words because it's just L1 to L2. But if it's contextualized in a bigger text or in a picture, that can be really helpful. I've started doing this and I love it. It's presentational speaking rehearsal. So whenever students are doing a speech or a presentation in my class, they have to turn in their typed version, but I also have them turn in their Mote version. I want to hear how they're speaking. I want to hear the inflection in their voice, and I want to hear how they're doing it. And it really helps them too, because you don't want the first time that a student gets up to give a presentation or speech, and the first time they read through it is going to be when they're doing it. You want them to have some time to rehearse. And so by doing this, it kind of forces them to rehearse, but in a way where you can also give them feedback. So you can hear and listen to what they're doing, give them feedback, and that way they're not giving the speech cold. They're not giving the presentation cold. They've given a rehearsal, they've had some feedback, and hopefully it'll go better because of that. I also like Mote for motivating feedback. So readings, this is presentational speaking, but you're the one presenting to the student. This is not presentational speaking as in the students are presenting. This is you presenting your comments through Mote. So you're reading student work or listening to student work in Slides, Docs, or Classroom. Then you can create comments on student work using Mote. And then students listen to those Motes to get feedback. And as we talked about before, they seem like they're way more likely to listen to those Motes than they are to read your feedback. And something that I have started doing, my colleague told me about, such a good idea. I found myself repeating what I was saying in comments a lot, and sometimes I had a lot of comments to write. So what I did was create a bank of comments on a Google Doc. So if for example, I was saying great job or you need to work on this particular type of analysis, and it was just the same mistake over and over or the same kind of praise over and over, I would make a Mote in advance of that and then make sure that I also included a Mote that was more specific and tied to the student because you want to create that personal connection. But if there were things that you could save yourself a little time and create a bank of Motes, you could do that as well. Because I find myself doing that with written comments anyway, copying and pasting a little bit if students are doing the same thing over and over again. So why not do it with Motes and have the same thing said over and over again? So that can be really, really helpful. This is a locomotion brain break. I find that brain breaks are super helpful for creating that classroom community and really creating those connections between students. And so having a bunch of votes up there where students pick a number, and it's almost like Simon Says, where it's a command that students do something, but it's a pre-recorded command. So students pick it, and then they have to do whatever the action is in the target language, or if you're doing it for something else, you could show a picture that students have to do and describe it or something like that, depending on what subject you're doing. But it's so fun to have these already kind of put in there. And when you're seeing the students weigh in when it's been 10 minutes on the same thing, 15 minutes on the same thing, and they need this brain break, pulling up something like this can be really, really helpful. And having it pre-recorded so you don't have to do it over and over again every time can also be really helpful. So I highly recommend you do that. Finally, exactly what we did today, having an asynchronous question doc. I got some feedback from students at the end of the year saying having this kind of back channel idea is so very helpful for them. If they get the chance to back channel, it helps them to get the answers they need. It helps them to understand what they're doing. And it just really helps overall to have this question doc. And also, if some students are asking the same question, it gives me the feedback that, ooh, maybe I should be more clear about that, or I should do that a little better. Or students can just see that, oh, I have that question. Look, it's already answered. So that can be really, really helpful. So those are my ideas here. And if you want to reach out, here is my contact info. I've included my Gmail. Feel free to email me if you have any questions. My Twitter, my Instagram, my website that was referred to earlier. Feel free. I have tons of templates on here. Feel free to use anything on there. I have previous presentations I've given on my YouTube channel there. And I also have my previous Mote presentation that I gave for idioma education linked on the bottom there. So this was a ton of information. So I realize that you're probably going to be unpacking this over the next few days. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.